Hey there, everybody. It's Eternal Snowman here with another episode of BLT recap and predictions. This time, I'm going to be covering week 2 and week 3, and this is the week 2 recap and week 3 predictions, and this will be the last regular season week. And next week, we'll begin the playoffs, which will be a 3-week process as well. The first week being the quarterfinals, where the second and third team plays or second and third team of each group will play against the other second and third team of each group. And then the second week will be the winners of those will play against the first seeds of the group, and then the final week will be the finals. So, with that said, let's go back and look at the matches from last week and see how all the matches went down. So we'll start with the Alakazams versus the Stuffles. Dandaman played Plimsoll Punks, and Dandaman won using my HO, actually. I didn't pass it to him, but MJ did. Um, Honestly, I feel like he didn't play that well, but I think Plimsoll Punks also didn't play well at all. And this is a bad reflection on them. And it's actually very bad that they dropped this game because they did switch Plimsoll Punks to Ubers over 100% GXE, who I would think definitely would have won this match. And 100% GXE lost his match in PU, so I think they took a gamble kind of in that sense, and it didn't pay off for them. So they should have, if they had it the other way around, then I think they could have won this game pretty easily, and they would have taken this win overall. But sometimes it doesn't go that way, and um, Dandaman won. So credit to him because it's still. I mean, I wouldn't say he played necessarily well, but he did do what he had to win. Attribute beat Tote, and there wasn't that much to say about this match. It was pretty clean. Attribute just beat him. Snowfall versus Sam.Tan. I don't think there was anything interesting about this match either. Snowfall just outplayed him, and yeah, there wasn't that much to say. Arse9 versus King of Crimea. I'm pretty sure this game was very unclose because King of Crimea lost from Builder. He had a very strange team. He tried to incorporate a kind of a Linoon balance team, which tends to be um, kind of difficult to do, in my opinion. I don't really know the specifics, but I think Linoon's mostly only good on HO. I haven't really seen a balanced team with Linoon kind of succeed because of the lack of defensive presence it provides. So like it kind of is difficult to uh, use properly, and then he lost. I think in large part due to that. Epic Boost versus Pokeart, there wasn't that much to say about this. Epic Boost got kind of lucky, and there was some like hacks that made the end game a lot harder for Pokeart. But I don't think either player played it extremely well, and didn't show me anything that was very impressive. Like there are some times when I feel really impressed by a player because they can come back from a bad position or they come back from a bad matchup or whatever. But these both of these players didn't show me anything like that. So you know, so far nothing too much to say about that. Snow, uh, Snow Janiri or Zuri versus 100% GXE. Zuri had actually a really bad matchup in this one, and he managed to pull it out. I think this is a big testament to how good of a player he is, especially in PU. He has a large understanding of the meta, and I don't think it was that smart to put 100% GXE versus him, which, in my opinion, is the Stuffle's best player. I think you should use that leverage to get your win where you can. Each win is not weighted equally yet, or sorry, each win is weighted equally in terms of the scoreboard, but obviously for matchups it does matter. So if they believe that this would give them a better chance in both matches, it does, in theory, give them a better chance to win PU and a slightly worse chance to win Ubers, but they were still favored in Ubers in my opinion. But like because the gamble didn't really pay off, I kind of think that in hindsight it would have been better just to get their free win in Ubers and then kind of give up PU. I just feel like that would have been smarter. And Rajat Shu continues his impressive streak with a win over the Amuse. I think that his opponent's not that good and didn't show me anything special, but um, it is very surprising to me that Rajat Shuda is going to project to finish this group potentially 3-0 because I didn't really have him as a top tier player, especially, as a player manager, I think he wasn't at that elite tier, but, if you can get the wins, that's what matters the most. Obviously, there's still quite a few weeks to play, so he still has to prove his value, and because the Stuffle's already locked into playoffs, will have to show that he can do it in the coming weeks in playoffs as well, to be able to show that his team he can carry his team. And then Boyne lost to SMB. There wasn't that much to say about that match either. So, also, I'll talk a little bit about the standings at the end, but basically, based on the situation, there's a lot of different scenarios that can go down. But the Stuffles, the Swamperts, the Blastoises, and the Heatrans have all locked up their playoff spots, so it's basically down to the other match that the last playoff spot is going to, and then there's seeding that's going to happen as well. So let's move on to the Weaviles versus the Swamperts. So Pidgeot Mega beat Ninja Dog. I don't believe Ninja Dog played very well in this. Honestly, he's had a kind of disappointing BLT performance so far. He played against two not amazing players who hasn't shown a ton. I think Pidgeot Mega is a pretty good player, but I do think that he's not at the level of Ninja Dog. And the big issue here is that I feel like Ninja Dog hasn't had the support or comfort to be able to succeed because while he is a really good player, he hasn't brought the best teams and he hasn't had probably the best practice. So he's probably in a situation where he couldn't win as consistently. Um, and it's basically just because he doesn't have the situation necessary to really help him. Someone's messaging me. I'm recording it right now, so interestingly enough, yeah, there's also the fact that Ninja Dog just doesn't have as much experience in these other tiers. Granted, they are still winning that LC slot this week, so that's not really an issue for them, but it does kind of hurt that Ninja Dog hasn't been able to perform at the level that maybe some players expected, mostly because I feel like him playing other tiers, he's not at that level where he can just kind of drop in and play other tiers at a high level. It's like if it was like Fristo, Ham, or myself, or one of these other guys who are more known as kind of well-rounded players, I think that this could have worked out a lot better. But because Ninja Dog doesn't have that kind of tier experience outside of LC, it it does kind of show that he's a little bit more one-dimensional, even though he is kind of like a really good LC player. And then Chaitanya versus Halaman. Chaitanya won that cleanly. Real Surfing Team versus Kather. I think this was like the worst match of the week, honestly. Both players played it, or okay, I should say first, the Real Surfing Team or Surfing Team brought a really questionable team. It was Mono Defog Stall, where the defogger was Moltres, which is really bad because it's very exploitable. A lot of common rockers can rock on that, like for example, Terrakion. And the issue with Mono Defog with Moltres is that if you let rocks go up, the only way you can clear them is having Moltres clear them, right? But you can't clear rocks against the Pokemon that can just beat Moltres 1v1. And Stall suffers a lot with rocks on the field. And luckily for him, he was facing a team that he could defog with Moltres on because he was facing Rocks Cobalion. But he still let rocks go up and then Moltres die, which was just a huge mistake. And the end game was played not very clean at all on both sides. Kather almost had an advantage and almost outplayed a bad situation that he kind of put himself into, but he didn't really need to do that. And it seemed like he kind of lacked the understanding of how to play out the end game. because or like mid and end game, like he kind of had like a kind of an idea where he wanted to go, but he wasn't just 100% sure, and he kind of made some like kind of I don't know if I want to call them mid ground plays, but like he took it in a direction that I don't believe was correct. And in the end, he was punished for it, and he wasn't able to really pick up any kind of wins because any kind of wind because like against the stall team, he was just getting like grinded out, and the game almost like he almost won the game even though he didn't play very well. And I just felt like overall the performance of this game was just like a low quality UU game with kind of bad team selection from Surfy Teen and also just like kind of bad play. Like I think there was a lot of mistakes that were made. Granted, he did win, but I think that it kind of shows that if you bring stall at this point, a lot of players just don't know how to play against it cleanly, and even if you don't play the stall perfect, like you can kind of get a few wins against players who know more what they're doing. Like if you bring against like Ham or if you bring against like Snowfall, I think it's going to be a lot harder for you to just get a free win. But I guess Kather is not at that level yet, and so he needs to kind of show that he can play at a higher level if he wants to kind of consider himself like a good win or like in UU this year moving forward. So moving on, the Welsh will be Al Cap. I don't think there's that much to say about that. He brought cheese. Welsh was prepared and he kind of just beat him down. Peachy Clouds versus Bad Player. I've actually been quite impressed with Bad Player. He is now 2-0. Also, I want to make an apology for if he's watching this video. I didn't know that his Smogon name and kind of Showdown name were different, so I kind of didn't. I didn't have him as the. I didn't know that they were the same player through week 1 and 2, and then I said that OK132 was going to be was a sub because they had a different name on the different threads. So because of that, my mistake. I apologize for that. He beat Pokeart, I believe, in week 1, and then Peach Clouds in week 2, and that's a 2-0. Peachy Clouds, I don't think played it extremely clean. Kind of had a lack of kind of game plan going into the game, and OK132 had pretty good matchup and just played it solid, which is what you want to see. And then Omnis Draco versus GG, I guess Lamau. I think Omnis Draco played it clean and he won it. Same with the LC game, there wasn't that much to say about it. And the Doe game, similar. I think team selection is always the thing I'm kind of looking at for Doe, because I think it's much harder to build Doe at a high level, and there's a lot of ways that you can make mistakes. But I won't go too much into it because like this match isn't the most important. But when we get into playoffs and stuff, I'll kind of be taking that into account because on the doubles side, it does matter a lot about team building. Team building things come a lot into play as well. So you kind of have like a tight restriction in that sense, or not really tight, but it's like you have to play it clean, or you have to build it clean because there's a lot of ways that like sloppy builds can be exploited, and you have to kind of have a defined idea of what you want to do. So then moving on, the Snorlaxes played the Blastoises. So I beat Reggie. This is the last game of our series. I had a pretty bad matchup, but I managed to win it. Like not that difficult. I think he didn't play terrible, but he just didn't have a long-term game plan as to how he wanted to win. I caught one double early with on his Ho-Oh, and then he didn't really have a strong breaker, so it ended up being kind of bad for him. Poison Adhesive beat Mysterious M. There was a little bit of luck involved in this game. It was Rain versus Balance, and Poison Adhesive managed to win with a little bit of luck. Aura Mega versus Dennis the Menace. Um, I think we should have won this match actually because Dennis had the right guess on how to. He had a really bad matchup first of all, but he had the right guess on the last turn, and if he clicked U-turn instead of Z U-turn with Scizor, he would have won the game. Um, but because he clicked U-turn, or sorry, because he clicked Z U-turn, he didn't manage to kill the Magneton, and then it got trapped. The Scissor got trapped and lost because it was like just not enough damage. But if he clicked U-turn, then he might have been fine. Um, but he almost came back from a big deficit, which is like from matchup. So that's a good sign for Dennis the Menace and not a good sign for OS Mega because um, when you have really good matchup, you just want to play solid and kind of choke your opponent out and not give them any outs to win the game. And because Dennis the Menace was sticking around and managed to bring it into a position where he could almost win, it's not very good for OS Mega, and that's just like not a good sign for them. Harley versus Abyssal Ruins. Harley played very well this time. Tom Buchan played very well this time. I think he still made quite a few mistakes, but I think like the thing that I like the most about Tom Buchan and as to why I think Trace really liked him is because he makes aggressive plays and proactive plays, which is very important because it's very hard to improve when you're just kind of playing reactive and defensively, because that will then come down to a lot of team selection and whatnot. But if you can make proactive plays and like make doubles and make kind of reads, then even in bad positions, you can kind of fight out of it. And you'll never just always just be when you're in a losing position, just lose the game, right? So he kind of recognizes this. Sometimes he's a little over aggressive, and sometimes he kind of makes a few bad reads, or like bad plays off good reads. Um, but like overall, I think I really liked that kind of aspect of him. He still made a few mistakes, but overall he played it really clean, and kind of recognized a clean end game this time around. Unlike last week, where he kind of choked away a good win. So if he was 2-0 here, we could be talking a very different story, but unfortunately he's not. But I still am pretty happy with his performance this week. Sifikon played Prince of All Tacos. I think Sifikon choked this game. I don't think that there was much of an excuse at all. He didn't play it very clean at all in the end game, even though he was in a favored position. I think he basically just had to go. Um, he had an advantage in the end game, and he basically just needed to play it safe and kind of take a certain route to win, and he didn't take that route. So while he could have won this game, I think it's just um, he needs to like when you get put in a position to win the game, you should always be like looking to find a clean end game that you can like always win from that position. And he was in a situation where he could have always won or like very close to always won, and he didn't take advantage of it. Ranman versus X Skelly. I think Ranman was in the same position as Sifikon. He had an end game where he had almost a 100% win, and then he choked it away by not clicking recover with Quagsire, or like the other option would just be to switch out. So basically, he scalded and let his Quagsire die for no apparent reason against the like on the final turns he was up like 5-2 or 4-2 or something, and then the Primeape was hitting the I think it was Primeape was hitting the Quagsire while it was toxic or whatever. So all you had to do was just recover through it or switch out and basically just preserve that Mon's HP, and then he just had the Quagsire to like finish off the Regirock basically. And like you can toxic stall it or whatever. But Quagsire would beat the Regirock in a 1v1. Um, but like he didn't do that, and then Quagsire died. It was really puzzling and questionable play, as he had a 100% win basically and threw it away. Sanjay easily took the LC game, so there wasn't that much to say there. Um, I think one thing that is good about our team, even though we did switch up our lineup here, it does show that like our good players are good because they managed to play well in all the matches. And because of that, I do have a little bit more faith going forward in our team because I was kind of in a bad spot. I kind of wasn't too high after, the week one kind of misplays and some of the early week two misplays. I think that it was kind of disappointing so far as a season. I think that we should be in a 2-0 position, as like our wins are solid and our losses are, we could have made much better plays. So while we are in two tie position, or like we have two ties right now, I think we could be in a position to, we should have been in a position to be talking about 2-0s as like the only like real loss in my eyes, like the ones that like we've lost, and it wasn't just because of our huge misplays, is like the OU match this week and then the Devils match last week, which both involved like a small amount of luck. And I'd be okay with accepting the UU match this week being a loss as well, because it was a bad matchup. Um, and then Cheese beat Haven solidly in doubles as well. Um, this time he brought a better team and he just played better. And in the end, he did make kind of a choke play, and then Havens choked it back to him. So it was a little bit interesting, but it happens. I do think that chokes and doubles are a little bit more excusable because it is harder to see all the different lines of thought. However, I I still don't want to like sound like that. I want to say that it's excusable, but um, a win's a win, honestly, and that's just how I'm viewing it now, because um, it's most important first and foremost that we get the win. And obviously, Cheese knows that he can where he can improve. So, um, like I trust him to do that. And the final matchup of the week is the Restaurants versus the Heatrans. Jiren beat Terracotta. Um, Jiren brought stall, and Terracotta was just not prepared at all for stall. He had literally no stall breakers in, which is very surprising because, well, I guess not really very surprising, but rather, I think standard teams can just destroy stall, but Terra has kind of a interesting playstyle and team selection, so he kind of uses different minds. I'm not sure if Jaren had the read on it or what, but he did get an insanely good matchup with stall, which is very rare because generally if I load a standard team into stall, I'm like 60-40 favored or even better, because standard stuff has just inbuilt stall breaking tools. But credit to Jaren, he did play the matchup decently well, or good enough to win the match, because he still got a good matchup and won because of it. But there was no other real good news for the restaurants. Friso beat Maroon very cleanly. It was like from the get go, good matchup. Um, Everything, and there was like a bit of luck going in Friso's way. DJ Balloon Spitfire Arcanine beat McCav pretty cleanly. Lugia Numair beat P-Toad pretty cleanly as well. Ham beat Michelius pretty cleanly as well. V bounced back, and he played very well. I was actually very impressed with V's play over Skipcan, which is basically my highlight of the week. And then Richard Peppers brought Webbs versus London in just one-off matchup, basically. And then Caro beat Shadow Monster, which I think is actually really big because it shows that Caro is actually a very good player. I did kind of think he was a little rusty. I didn't have a lot of faith in him coming into this week, but um, he did get his win in doubles, and that's really big. And I think that's like kind of their two bright spots of Jiren and Charo. Both I didn't really expect to win, but they need their other players to kind of step up, because as of right now, as I'll talk about the different standings. So because, or I'll go to the other week to talk about it, because it makes a little bit more sense. So the Stuffles and the Swampards both have 3 points. You get 2 for a win and 1 for a tie, and 0 for a loss, of course. So the Stuffles and the Swampards both have 3 points, the Weavals have 0, and the Alakazams have 2. And it's the same situation here where we have 2, the Reshiram have 0, and the Blastoises and Heatrans have 3. So because of that, since it's top 3 go to playoffs, the Heatrans and Blastoise are actually already guaranteed into playoffs, and same with the Stuffles and Swampards. And they'll be playing for seeding, since the first seed will get a bye. And than the other match. So this one will be the determinant um, of the final seed for the playoffs, or the final team that goes to the playoffs slash. But the Alakazams and the Snorlaxes, like we can both still make the first seed because say the other two teams tie and then we get a win, a large win, then it's possible that we can still make it off of point differential. I'm actually not sure if they're going to use point differential or a tiebreaker match. I'm gonna ignore that for now. And I'll go through the I'm gonna go through the matchups here for all the different matches. So the predictions for this week. So we'll start with Plumsoul Punk versus Pidgeot Mega. This one, I have a lot of question marks coming into both matches. I think this is very similar to last week for the Stuffles in the sense that they haven't had the chance to go for 100% GXC and Ubers and Plumsoul Punks and PU again this week, with I think 100% GXC having basically a 100% win versus Pidgeot Mega from what I've seen so far, and Plumsoul Punks will have a harder matchup versus Omnis Draco, but they chose to take kind of like a mid-ground thing where they can lose both or they can potentially win both. However, I'm going to favor Pidgeot Mega here. I think Plumsoul Punks has looked uncomfortable in Ubers, and maybe he'll step up his game this time around, but I don't really trust that much into the support that Plaza is providing. I'm not sure how much it is. It seems a little bit suspect here, so I'll favor Pidgeot Mega slightly, 51-49, but I'll say it's very close. I think there's a lot of question marks coming in for both players into this match, so there's a lot to prove. Tote versus Halaman. I'll favor Halaman quite solidly. I don't think Tote has played very impressive at all, and Halaman has been much better. Even though they're both O2 from my knowledge, I believe Halaman has played much better in his games, which is very important because um, it's not just about like winning and losing. It's about like how well you play, right? So even if you are O2, I have a lot more faith in you if you're playing really well than if you're 2-0 and you played bad players and got lucky or like just brought like got perfect matchup or like whatever it is. So I have more faith in Hellman here. Snowfall versus Kather. Kather, like I said earlier, didn't play very well against the stall. I think Snowfall is a much better player in general. I think this one is actually kind of close because Kather has proved in the past that. Oh, right. Hellman 60-40 over Toad, by the way. Snowfall versus Kather is 55-45 in my eyes versus Snowfall for Snowfall. But it is on Snowfall to prove that he can still play at the elite level in UU. I know I'm pretty sure he's 2-0 right now, but I do think that he has had not the hardest like opponents as of now. So Kather will be kind of a proving ground for him. So Arsenal versus the Welsh Wall. I think that the Welsh Wall will finish 3-0 in this group in a relatively tough RU group, honestly. And I think both players are 2-0 right now, but I think the Welsh Wall has shown more. And the onus will mostly be on Arse9 to kind of break the semi-stall / balance style that the Welsh Wall loves. So I think it's much harder for you to do that. You have to play to basically his style, and if you aren't, which I think like Cap didn't do that last week, and it was pretty clear that it wasn't even close. So we shall see how that goes, but I'm going to favor the Welsh Wall here, 60-40. Epic Boost versus OK132. OK132, a bad player, has been showing up pretty well. Epic Boost has not, in my eyes. He didn't close out a clean match, even though he had a huge advantage early last week and kind of let PokeArt stay around. I think bad player has played much cleaner, and I expect a decent matchup and just to clean it up pretty solidly. So OK132 favored 60-40 here. 100% GXC versus Omnis Draco, which is probably the highlight of this series. Definitely the most interesting. I'm going to favor Omnis Draco here slightly, 55-45 here. I think he has a lot more experience in PU, and it is kind of a different meta. I know 100% GXE had a very clean match against Ziri where he had did fetch an amazing matchup, but he didn't manage to close it out against Ziri, who, granted, I think Ziri is the best player PU wise in this tournament, so not that much of a shame to lose to him, but unfortunately, he did lose even with a good matchup. So I do think that like once again that he's going to be in an unfavorable position. I think Omnistrico is also a good player, not at Ziri's level, but just below that. And I think that he will win this, or I'll favor him slightly. And Rush.Shoot versus I'm Just Gray, and I guess I'll be talking about Raj.Shoot in a better position because I think he's played extremely well, and been putting himself in a position to be talked about as like kind of a good player, as I talked about earlier. And so I'll favor Raj.Shoot here. I haven't seen anything special from I'm Just Gray. Raj.Shoot, I'll favor him 65-35. Boyne versus TTTX. Not that much to say here. I haven't seen anything that impressive from Boyne. TTTX favored here 65-35. Ninja Dog versus Dan Demand. I'm going to put this as a 50-50 mostly because I don't know how much Ninja Dog is coming in prepared for this. He didn't show up impressively last week against Pidgeot Mega, and Dan Demand is 2-0 right now, but the issue is he's gotten 2-0 wins off of matchup slash whatever. It has a lot to do with the builder. And so when you go up against better players, I don't know how much that's going to work out. But Dan Demand is 2-0, so you do have to put some value on that. But I'll put this as a 50-50, so because I have a lot of question marks for both players. Dan Demand I don't think has played played like the matchups very well and kind of given his opponent the ability to stay around and kind of win the game. And Ninja Dog has had a lot of question marks, but I have a lot more faith in his playing ability just from like beyond this tournament. Shaitanya versus Attribute, which is going to be an interesting match to watch. Definitely the highlight of this series. Personally, I think Shaitanya will be favored. I think he has shown more to me. I think he is a better player in OU, but I don't know how much the difference is. I'll say it's 55-45 in Chaitanya's favor, but I don't know how much of a difference there is. I've just been more impressed by Chaitanya's play in general, though. Real Surfy Teen versus Sam.Tan. I think if Real Surfy Teen decides to bring Stall or something similar again, I think he was going to win. Sam.Tan hasn't showed anything impressive at all. So I'll favor Surfy Teen just on merit of that, but I don't think either player has shown like strong playing ability yet. Oh shoot. Sorry. And I'll favor him 55-45. GG, I guess Lamau versus King of Crimea. I believe King of Crimea is actually 0-2, but he has played both Arsenine and the Welsh Wall. So I'm favoring King of Crimea here. He had a very whatever team last week, I feel like, but based on his like past experiences and him keeping it very close with the Welsh Wall, I'm going to favor him slightly here. Or favor him actually quite a bit here. 65-35 here. PG Clouds versus the Amuse. I think it's going to be on PG Clouds to prove that he can still be a good player outside of Mono. I think the Amuse hasn't shown anything impressive at all so far, so I'll favor PG Clouds here 60-40. Cat versus Ziri. I think Ziri is going to take this like hands down 95-5. Pokeart versus Serene Grace. I think Serene Grace is just far better of a player. 90-10, 95-5. SMB versus Alternative. SMB favored here, like 95-5. I think these are like some of the most one-sided matches we've seen so far. So moving on, once again, like always, I'm going to be talking about the other match first, and then I'll talk about my own. Reggie versus Richard Pepper. Reggie is 0-2 so far, but I think he's still at a pretty above average level for BLT, and much better than Richard Pepper. So I'm going to be favoring him 70-30 over Richard Pepper, who hasn't shown anything impressive for me. Tragedius did not play last week because he got subbed out, but I wouldn't favor anybody over Ham. I think Ham is just the better player. 80-20 here, Ham's favor. UU Terracotta versus Oros Mega. Oros Mega is now 2-0. I do think that both games that he's won hasn't been the most clean against the best opponents and whatnot. Um, and he hasn't played the best. So it's not the best 2-0, but it still is a 2-0, and Terracotta is 0-2. Um, I will say that Oras Mega is. I'll give a slight edge to mostly because I don't know Terracotta's experience in UU. So I'll favor Oras Mega over Terracotta just slightly based on that experience. So 55-45 to Oras Mega. Abyssal Ruins are keeping it icy versus Lugia Numer. I would still favor here keeping it icy, even though he hasn't had the best group stage so far. I think that he is still worth the money that he is still a top player here. And I haven't seen anything impressive from Lugia Numer, who has won based off basically his opponent's misplaying or whatnot. So I'll favor Abyssal Ruins here. 60-40. Prince of All Tacos versus Spitfire Arcanine. This is very interesting because the Heatrans didn't switch up their lineup. Now Spitfire Arcanine, who has had a pretty well, he did beat me Cab last week, but I still don't think his UU is very impressive. But I would have favored him over Orlis Mega like pretty solidly versus Prince of All Tacos, who I think has had kind of an up and down well, I believe he is actually 2. Actually, let me check the spreadsheet real quick. The Blastoise is Principal Tacos, yeah, is actually 2-0. So kind of a quiet 2-0, I feel like, because I don't really see his opponents as being. I mean, it was Sificon, and I believe he beat Michelius the week before. Both players who I have felt like have had underperforming BLTs yeah, as of this video, but I think it'll be on him to prove that he's better than Spitfire Arcanine here. I'm going to be favoring Prince Voltaku slightly though, just because I don't know about Spitfire Arcanine's NU experience, kind of just like how I didn't really know that much about his UU experience. I think he's mostly an RU player, to be honest, and that's where he would really shine. So 55-45 Prince Voltaku is. Xskelly versus Yoshi 972. I think Xskelly won last week basically purely off a choke. And I was very impressed with Yoshi 972 or V's play last week, even though he didn't have a play or like he lost basically purely off a matchup against Siffy or against Rodman in week 1. I think that he will pull this one back and finish 2-1 in the group stage after a very impressive game last week, and I'll favor him 60-40. Frisso over Jack in my box. I think Frisso is much like him, one of the best players around all around, so favoring him 80-20. Havens versus Shadow Monster. I think last week kind of showed that Shadow Monster's week 1 performance was rather anomaly rather than consistently showing that he's a top player. I think not being able to beat Carolina wasn't like the best, and especially because I feel like Kara didn't play it extremely clean. Obviously, I think that doubles there's a lot of nuance to it, so even if you don't play perfect, like a lot of times you'll be able to win because there's a lot of different paths and it's harder to see. I think Havens will show that he can still win here, and I'll say that he's going to be favored here 60-40. So moving on to finally our match, which we have to either draw or win to be able to move into playoffs. If we lose this, then we'll have to play a tiebreaker, I assume. I'm not 100% sure though. Mysterious M versus Jiren. I think Mysterious M should win this one. I believe that he has kind of he is the best Ubers player. I know that Jiren has beat both Terracotta and Reggie before this, but I believe the Terracotta win was mostly based on matchup. If he doesn't get perfect matchup, which I don't know, I mean maybe he has something prepared for Mysterious M that does get perfect matchup, but if Mysterious M is prepared for that, or like if they go in with a even matchup or even Mysterious M slightly better, then I'm going to favor Mysterious M quite a bit. Dennis the Menace versus Maroon. I think this one will probably be the closest of this week. Both players have, or Dennis hasn't showed up that well this BLT going 0-2 so far, but he did play well last week in terms of he brought a bad matchup to be close. Maroon, on the other hand, didn't win against Frisso, which is not that like it's not that bad to lose to Frisso, and he has had a past of like being successful in OU, so I think this will be very interesting to kind of see how both players show up in this match. I'm going to be playing Michelius. I'm pretty confident that I'll be able to win. I don't really want to like talk trash about him or whatever, but he hasn't had the best BLT as of so far. I believe 0-2, but I mean I believe I'm the best UU player, honestly. Um, but I don't want to speak too highly of that. That's not for me to decide. I guess it's for other people to decide. Harley versus Carolina. I think this will be very interesting. Harley has had, or Tom Bugian had a really good week 2 and then a questionable kind of week 1 where he had a big lead and had a 100% win where he choked it away. So I wonder which one will show up this week. I have more faith in Tom Bugan or Harley here than before, but I don't know how well Caro is going to show up. So there's that. I think Sanjay is going to beat Pito. There's not that much to say here. In PU, Ronman versus Skipcan, similar to Harley, I think Ronman has shown that he can be, or it's going to be important for him to win because he can be in a position to play well, and he can also be in a position to kind of like mess up his leads. Like he did have a big lead or a 100% win, as if you would, and didn't manage to close out the game in week 2. So it depends on how well he plays, but he could potentially um, win this or lose this based on how well he plays. Sifikon, I'm going to say Mikav is a better LCer, even though Mikav hasn't had the best BLT so far. I do believe he is still one of the top LCers in this tournament, so I'll favor him here as well. And then Cheese over London, and London has had kind of a up or mostly down BLT, honestly. He's lost to Havens and Frisso, I believe. I might be wrong about the matchups. He lost to Havens and somebody else in LC, but basically my point being that Richard Pepper, that's right. Basically, I believe Cheese has had a better BLT, and I think he's going to win this relatively solidly. I'm not too sure. I think London and Cheese are on comparable levels for skill. I think he's like slightly below Cheese, but in terms of doubles like skill and knowledge, but I still think that he's in the same kind of realm to be able to challenge him. But the issue is that I don't know how much London is like. I think mental does play a part into it. If you have lack of confidence going in, then it might be more difficult for you. So this one, I believe, was a little bit of a longer video. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. And I'm looking forward to playoffs in both this week. I think BLT kind of has been picking up a little bit, especially since like basically the second half of week 2. I think that everything has been going a lot better, and I've been more impressed with a lot of the newer players who have shown up. Kind of like, I don't know if it was in response to my calling them out, but I have been impressed with it, and so I've been in a better position for BLT and a better mood about BLT. So thank you guys for watching. I really enjoyed making this video, and I really am looking forward to more BLT matches because I think it's just ramping up. So with that said, I'll see you guys next week for another recap and analysis. Thank you for watching.